What's up, Antioch? As you can see, I'm outside right now in the Garden of Eden, outside our house. When this vine grows in, everything just gets really green and lush. And the reason I'm outside is because today we're going to be talking about the nature psalms, and we're going to break this up into 2 weeks. The first week is going to be the created universe, what God has made that we get to witness, and then the second week is going to be what God has created in us, the beauty of creation in humans. So outside, pardon the noise, you'll probably hear like garbage trucks driving by and explosions and gunfights in the background, but this is where we're at. So the psalm that we're going to be reading today is Psalm 104. We're going to pause really briefly. We want to pray over this, that God would reveal his heart in the psalm, and then we're going to read it together. Psalm 104, and then as soon as you're done with 104, you guys can talk it over, ask questions from one another about the intended meaning and what's God trying to teach us here. And then I want you to go back to Psalm 19, and I just want you to read like the first 2 or 3 verses, okay? Because those will put 104 into context, okay? So give it a try. We're going to pause, read the psalm, pray, and discuss, okay? Go ahead. All right, so first of all, the Psalm 104 verse 2 is one of the coolest verses in all of Scripture where it says, he wears light as his garment, like a beam of light. His lasers are his clothes. This is the reason that we want to take the time to understand the Psalms of nature is because nature is one of the loudest voices in our lives teaching us about God. You can learn something really crucial about the Creator by spending time in His creation. Like, we know this instinctively. This is why we go camping, and this is why we love just being in a place where you can see for miles of the created order. This awakens something in our soul. It's a really beautiful thing. Like, the creation on earth ranges from like this, which is just like an ordinary everyday. I look out my window and I see that the grass is growing. I see that the trees are like they're putting forth their fruit. There are animals and insects and every little thing. All of this is part of a created order that God has made to glorify Him. From very small. This grass is a miracle. Like, I can't make this. If you give me none of God's ingredients and just say, make your own ingredients and create something that can grow and sustain, and year after year it's going to die and it's going to come back to life, it's going to make something good. I just can't do that. And so we experience this in very small ways, just in the grass in the backyard, and then in ever increasing ways. If you spend go to Manitou Park and wander in the rose gardens for I don't know, half an hour. Get up on Rose Hill and look at it. There's 800 different variations of roses, and each one of them is different and distinct, and there's a creativity to it. There's an art to it. You go into Duncan Garden, which is the big like French manicured lawns, and you can see that they're all kind of laid out in this grid. And this awakens something in us. We see that what God has created is good. This amplifies if you get down to like the Spokane River. This year there was so much snow, and so the river was just like roaring through the city. They had to shut down the walking bridges because it was just too powerful. And this is part of God's creation, that if you get up to like Columbia River and you see that it's pumping by millions of gallons of water every second, that awakens something in our soul that points us not toward the creation but toward the one who created it, and go, how could He make something that is so grand and just leave it there? Like, knowing that it might take us years to centuries, thousands of years to discover some of the most beautiful things that He has created, and yet He creates them. This amplifies if you go to the ocean. We've talked before about the phrase in Scripture, the fear of the Lord. And I've talked about how the best description of the fear of the Lord is to go and stand next to the ocean, which can be at simultaneously can be terrifying. Like you see a ship in a storm on the ocean, and you know that ocean is just gonna eat it. And at the same time, it can be inviting, like you go to the beach and the ocean just invites you in. And so the feeling that you get when you stand on the edge of the ocean, you go to the Oregon coast, you go Cannon Beach or Seaside, you see like Haystack Rock, you go down further down the coast, and this for us like just awakens this beauty of creation. And this is not about the creation itself, but it awakens us to wonder, like, who could do this? Who could make this? Who could take the time to carve this out and put these pieces together? If you spent time in Yosemite or Yellowstone, you get to the redwood forest, like all of these pieces of creation that God has made and that God is completely in control of. This is why, in my opinion, this is why Jesus like walks on water. He proves that all of creation is subject to him. The wind's blowing too hard and he just says stop, and the wind stops. Creation not only was made by him, but he is the commander of it. He can like Jesus. There's one story when he walks by a fig tree and he's looking for a fig and there's nothing on it, and so he says, I don't like this fig tree, curse it. And the next day they walk by and the thing is just dead and crumbling. He has complete control over the created order. And this extends from fig trees and grass and vines all the way to like Rocky Mountains. If you've ever like driven through the Rockies or spent time in Glacier National Park and what that does to you, the grandness of the scale there just goes, there's something that put that together and that is in command of it. Jesus says at one word he can cause that mountain to crumble. He's in complete control of it. This is the creation of the beauty of earth that we get to live in. And I believe from this passage that it was given for our good. It was given for our joy. Like, why did God have to make the ocean such an intriguing, such an inviting place? It was because he knew that it would bring us joy. The color spectrum that you see when the sun sets, there's no natural purpose for that. There's no evolutionary need. That was just purely for the sake of beauty and joy. We live on a privileged planet, and it's because God desires for us to take joy in it, to see what he has made, and this teaches us something about him, and it brings us joy. This is a good thing. But it becomes an even bigger, it becomes a moment of holiness when we realize we are just a speck riding on a bigger speck that is hurtling at 1,000,000 miles an hour around an even bigger speck within a Milky Way galaxy of specks, that the universe is so much bigger than we can even comprehend, and yet he has looked at this planet and looked at you, and he knows every hair on your head. We'll talk about that next week. If we can just talk for a second about the scope of the universe. Did a quick Google search. How many stars are in the Milky Way galaxy? If you don't know, if you haven't passed third grade, that's the galaxy that our solar system is in. 8 planets in our solar system, not 9 anymore. See Pluto. Our solar system surrounds the sun, and our sun is one of 100 billion stars that are in the Milky Way galaxy, which is a lot. And then the Milky Way galaxy is one of 100 billion galaxies that make up the known universe that we can see through the Hubble telescope. Now, they estimate that there's probably twice that many galaxies that we just don't know about yet. Now, just for context's sake, I want for us to realize 100 billion, like, you just cannot fathom that number. You can't count up that high. And so for some reason, your brain just kind of goes, oh, big number. Okay, got it. Big number. But I want for us to quantify this for a second. So let's start with, imagine that you were naming things. And imagine you took 1 second, you're naming stars, right? Because there's 100 billion stars in our galaxy alone. So imagine that you name them 1 second at a time. So 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, and you're just rattling off names because you're good like that. If you wanted to name 1,000,000 stars, we can get our heads around 1,000,000 stars. You could do that every second for 12 straight days, and that would count. You would get 1,000,000 stars named, and that would be a big accomplishment. Like, I would respect that. But 1,000,000 stars, there's remember 100 billion in our galaxy. So 1,000,000 stars takes you 12 days to name. How about 1 billion? How long would it take you to count off 1 billion? Well, you're going, well, 12 days, man, 1 billion, that's back to September. 1 billion, if you were counting one every second, it would take you until, what's the math here? So it would take you 32 years. So you would be essentially counting until 2050, the year 2049. Okay, to count 1 billion of them. There's 100 billion of them. And so to count and name every star, and this is within our galaxy, every star, and around each of them there are planets and space. You can't even reach them in your lifetime. If you were on a ship that flew at the speed of light, you couldn't get to them, and yet there are 100 billion of them. If you wanted to name every single one of them and you took a second to name every single star in the Milky Way galaxy, it would take you 3,169 years, non-stop counting. And that's just within our galaxy. And remember, there are 100 billion galaxies. And so if you wanted to name every galaxy, it would take you 3,169 years of one every second just to give it a name. And that's not to explore it or see it or understand it. And yet God has made all of this. And through that magnitude of galaxies and stars and planets, he has zoomed in on our privileged planet. And on our privileged planet, he's not concerned with the oceans and with the mountains and with the redwood forest or with this tree or with my house. He's concerned with my heart. The heavens declare the glory of God. All of this exists for no other purpose than to glorify God. He made it so that we would see it, and that feeling of wonder is what we would call worship. When that feeling of wonder, of laying underneath a nighttime sky and counting and going, I can never count all of these. What a wonderful creator who could do this. That's a moment of worship. And this is why these are included in the Psalms. Remember, the Psalms are songs and prayers that lead us to worship through all circumstances. So we worship in our sorrow, we worship in our fear and our doubt, we worship when we're in nature, we worship when we see our own testimony, we worship when we're going into holy places. All of this exists for no other purpose than to cause us to worship. This is why we wanted to go back to Psalm 19 and read the verse there. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Day after day they pour forth speech, and night after night they reveal knowledge. The picture here is that the heavens are just like a babbling like teenage girl that just can't stop talking about how amazing the Creator is. Like, oh, did you know that he does this? And did you, like, if he, in this certain light, the heavens, you just, in every kind of neighborhood in space, you're going, oh, this tells me something about him. And oh, but did you know he did that? Can you understand what he's trying to accomplish here? This is the heavens declaring the goodness of God. The heavens declare the sovereignty of God, the power of God, the infinite might, his reach. You can't even travel to those places and he breathed them out. He made them exist with a word. The heavens declare the glory of God. What do you think you're doing, wasting your life worshiping lesser things? When you worship your job, your friends, your spouse, your kids, your hobbies, all of these things are unworthy. And so nature psalms point us to the worthiness of him. We go, if anything is worthy of pouring out my life and giving up my life, it's the one who could do that. It's the one who could weave this together. Did you know within this one leaf there are over 1 million cells that are tied together by proteins that have to be in exactly the right order or it wouldn't hold its shape? Did you know, we'll talk more about this on the human body, that you're made up of trillions of cells, each of which are in connection to one another. You are like a living universe. And all of this isn't to point the glory toward the creation, but to the Creator. So, in our house churches this week, if you have like things that you need to say them. But really, we want to spend most of this time in worship or in prayer. Okay? Because what this drives us to, when we see the majesty of God that's revealed in the ocean and in the Rocky Mountains and in the Alpha Centauri and in the Milky Way, this should drive us to our knees and go, you are worthy of all honor and all glory and all praise. And so we'll just give it. I won't hold any back. It's all yours. Okay, so let's do that together as a church this morning. That's our highest aim, our only goal is to spend time reveling, taking joy in, seeing the wonder in his creation and rejoicing because of it, okay? So you're not dismissed, you're sent. Love you guys.